Welcome to the Beau Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. Today's show focuses on writers and the recent strike that screenwriters of the Writers Guild of America have enacted to negotiate better terms. Writing is an important element of television. I think of myself as a host, but I write every single episode of this show, and this is my 320th episode. Most shows have a team of writers, so whatever you see on TV is usually the product of a collaboration. I suppose my writing journey started years ago as a songwriter. I enjoyed the process of thinking up the theme of a song and then figuring out how to convey that story to the listener. In my song Blessed, for instance, I thought about the apathy that millennials had over the notion of patriotism. So I wondered, how do I address that? So I opened up the song with questions that I had. What is courage? What is honor? Are these words or just ideals long forgotten? Song compositions are a beautiful marriage of lyrics and melody. Songwriter Ed Sheeran is facing a very contentious court case right now about whether he copied Marvin Gaye's song Let's Get It On for his song Thinking Out Loud. About 11,000 TV and film writers belong to a guild called the Writers Guild of America, or WGA for short. This union is supposed to protect these writers, just as the Screen Actors Guild protects actors from exhausting filming days and other considerations that affect the actor. The contract between the Writers Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which represents about 350 TV and film production companies, ended on May 1st. The last time that writers initiated a strike was 15 years ago, and some of you will probably remember it. According to Morning Brew, a morning news aggregate, 15 years ago, Conan O'Brien filled airtime by seeing how long he could spin his wedding ring on his desk. With help from an MIT physicist, he hit an impressive 51 seconds. The James Bond movie Quantum of Solace was considered not the finest work in the James Bond series, partly because the script was never completed due to the strike. Actor Daniel Craig tried to rewrite scenes, but in his words, "A writer, I am not." More than 60 TV shows shut down production, leading to shortened seasons and awkward endings for series like Gossip Girl and Pushing Daisies. While the boom in reality TV was underway before the previous strike, the lack of competition from scripted series helped juice reality's ratings. Over 31 million people tuned in to watch David Archuleta lose to David Cook in the 2008 American Idol finale. Variety reports that the late-night hosts stayed off the air for 2 months, but Jay Leno, Kimmel, David Letterman, and Conan O'Brien managed to return to the air. Letterman came to new terms with the WGA and was able to bring his writing staff with him. Others had to wing it, with Leno doing his own monologues. The first night back, he quipped, "There are more people picketing NBC than watching NBC." What makes this particular strike different is that we have an endless supply of streaming services. So episodes have already been written and filmed months ago. That's why you can binge watch episodes, and it won't cut into your suspense over what happens next. The only reason we saw a major suspension during the pandemic is that production crews could not actually film the series. So the scripts were there, but the actors and crew could not physically film the shows. That's why previously packaged series, such as Tiger King, became so popular in 2020. That got old after a while, but the bottom line is that between all the plus platforms, we have a ton of content to entertain us. The shows that will certainly be affected are the late night four: Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, and Myers. Other shows that will have to halt production are Real Time with Bill Maher, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and the weekend favorite Saturday Night Live, which had what would have been a Pete Davidson hosted show this coming weekend. These shows could be affected for multiple weeks, so the networks have just decided to air old episodes of the shows. And nothing is worse than watching the same old stale shows and old episodes, particularly these shows. At Comedy Central, executives are testing a broad array of guest hosts for The Daily Show. including turns by the program's cadre of faux news correspondents. Nevertheless, these late-night shows depend on their writers for their punchlines and often unfunny jokes. As you know, the Late Night Four are all extremely liberal shows. They've gotten away from the universal comedy of Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, David Letterman, and Conan O'Brien. No doubt, the hosts of these shows have influence on what they want to say. But when you lock yourself in the echo chamber, you don't know what is appealing to the broadest audience. Jimmy Fallon is about the only one who steps out of this on occasion because he comes from a sketch comedy background over at Saturday Night Live. His skits can be funny, but I still feel that his writers push him in a leftist direction. Colbert, Myers, and Kimmel are essentially mouthpieces for the Democrat Party, shilling for their candidates and their officials. They think somehow that this has the broadest appeal. But the viewership numbers tell a different story. In 2018, 7 of the late night programs drew about $698 million in advertising revenue, according to Vivix, a tracker of ad spending. By 2022, that number had dwindled to $412 million, a 41% drop in ad revenue in 5 years. Now, of course, the streaming sensation had something to do with that because there was more competition. They also didn't have the live band or the live audiences in 2020 because of the pandemic and social distancing. And we look back in the rearview mirror at that nonsense. I recently watched an episode of Rachel Ray's cooking show where every person in the audience still had a mask on. It was unbelievable. I don't know if that was an old episode or not, but it just looked out of touch. But more broadly, as the late night shows lost their in-house audience, they were losing their at-home audience too. Ever since 2016, they were relentless about Donald Trump and became more activist than satirist. Many of the networks are actually cutting back on their late night talk show content and replacing them with other shows. James Corden is expected to be replaced by a game show. Warner Brothers Discovery has no replacements for Conan or Samantha Bee. The truth is, the networks failed to listen to their audiences. I've made several shows now about Bud Light and its failure to understand its customer base, which led to Alyssa Heinerscheid's disastrous $6 billion collapse of that brand. The networks were not polling the people. They just watched their ad revenue slip by almost 50%. That should have told them something. Now, the one exception to the overwhelming late night hiatus is Greg Gutfeld's show over at Fox News, which apparently will continue to air new episodes. Fox, of course, is reeling from the parting of ways with Tucker Carlson, which has caused a biblical-era exodus of viewership. Even Tucker himself remarked off camera to a colleague that Fox Nation, that network's streaming app and site, sucks. He's not wrong. So I presume Gutfeld, who likely does not have any WGA writers, is pressing on because it doesn't affect him. He'll just continue writing his own jokes and recycle them. The show has fared pretty well in its time slot, and Fox is likely trying to bring in the viewers that the other networks will be unable to entertain for weeks. Not a bad play, but Gutfeld isn't for everyone either. MSNBC actually just beat Fox for the first time in key primetime this week. My point is that Fox is bleeding viewers, and this is likely their attempt to get them back. It may not work because Tucker Carlson pointed out some glaring errors in the major media landscape that Fox is a part of. The truth hurts, and Tucker's words were always poignant and salient. He's a necessary voice at times like these, and I will wager that Fox is trying to keep him in a non-compete so that he can't take his voice to another conservative outlet anytime too soon, in spite of the fact that Valuetainment CEO Patrick Bet-David gave him a very public open offer of $100 million over 5 years to come work there. That's got to be tempting. The reason that Tucker maintained his 3 million or so viewers per night is that he was informative and entertaining. Maybe not as intentionally entertaining as the late night shows try to be, but there was still humor. SNL still has some great sketches, But for a while there, they got extremely liberal and activist too. I think it's hurt them a bit. It's not quite as preachy as Colbert, Kimmel, and Meyer's, but it panders. Keep watching at epochtv.com/The Beau Show.